Now, I want to really go on now and make a big and difficult philosophical and social point about what's going on in the world around us and what underlies this idea of the reconfiguration of learning from memory work to artifacts. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to talk about huge changes that are happening in the world around us. One change is in workplaces, where traditionally the workplace was a place where there were bosses and orders and memos and instructions, but now the idea is that we work in teams, we participate, we contribute, and so on. That's a big shift in a concept that I want to call the balance of agency, which means that from a world of command and compliance, we've got a world where you're supposed to be more actively participating within the work team, contributing ideas, making suggestions, being creative, being innovative, taking risks. That's actually a different kind of person. Let me take another example. I mentioned the new media a minute ago in terms of the contrast between Encyclopedia Britannica and Wikipedia. But you know, if you recall, you know, people who are perhaps the same generation as me or even younger than me, that there was a thing on the radio called the Top 40. So we were given the most popular songs and we all knew the Top 40. Now you've got students who all have their own iPods, and those students with their own iPods have constructed their own playlists. So if you go around the classroom and you ask students to go through their playlists, or they're on their phone now, they're going to be very different depending on the styles and interests of the students or the particular songs they like most. The top 40's gone. What you've got is every student making their own top 40. That's a big shift. And just to give you another, so that for me is a shift in the balance of agency from centralised media, which told you what was the best because they did the analyses, to these distributed activity sites where people are building their own musical playlists. Just to give you a third example, I want to take the example of video games. Okay, we all watch sitcoms and we still perhaps watch a lot of them. We watch films and we perhaps still watch a lot of them. The gaming industry is now bigger than Hollywood. And what's different between the narrative of a game and the narrative of a video or the narrative of a sitcom or a movie? Well, in a sitcom or a movie, you're a vicarious observer of a narrative. And sure, you might relate to the hero or the heroine and you might be excited by what's going to happen, but you can have no impact on the drift of the narrative because that's been constructed by someone else. In a game, what you do influences the narrative. Your missteps, your successes influence the outcome, and you are actually a character. Now, that's again a big shift in the balance of agency, where we're participating in narratives. Now, sure, the video game developer has built a kind of a scaffold which we're working in, but nevertheless, we are agents in that scaffold. So these are just some examples of workplace changes, new media changes, cultural changes, which I call a characteristic shift in the 21st century in the balance of agency. The old societies were ones of command and compliance. The society we're in now is of much more horizontal participation, active participation in these cultural spaces. So what does that mean for schools? Well, that means we should be really doing something which is in sympathy with our time. And if we don't, the kids will be walking up the wall. They'll become behaviour problems. They'll go crazy because where they're positioned purely as passive players, maybe you could have got away with it with me. You didn't get away with it all that well, in fact, but it doesn't matter. You did get away with it. You won't be able to get away with it with this generation of learners. So for me, this shift to active learning, active participatory learning, where you are the knowledge producer, we've got to do it. It's in sympathy with the spirit of our times, and if we don't do it, we'll end up in incredibly anachronistic institutions which our students hate. So they're a set of big picture questions why we have to do this. Now, the way in which this is often articulated in a very prosaic way in political discussions is around the idea of a knowledge society and a knowledge economy. All the time employers are saying we want students that will be innovative, that will be risk takers, that will be creative, that will contribute in an active kind of way. So there is actually a kind of a popular version of this in in the discourse of employers and the discourse of politicians, and it's the discourse of the knowledge economy or the knowledge society. So, in the old industrial economy, we could have command and compliance, the production line where you were told what to do and you obediently did it because the production line was flowing past all the time. But now in this society, it's one where we want a different kind of worker, a different kind of citizen, a different type of community member. That's what's expected, and that's what we've got to do in our schools. Along the way through this series of presentations, I'm going to mention some little tangential things, some heroes and interesting points from the world of learning, the world of education. And here we have a classical image of a Chinese scholar. And this idea of the scholar is very old in Chinese culture, and it's the point where the person who writes also becomes the person who teaches, and a very important person in society. So on the Chinese side of the story, we often think of these developments in information and communication technology as something that's come out of the West. Well, if you take a long view of things, in fact, writing as a phenomenon, which is actually information technology, it's actually about being able to spread messages across time without the person delivering the message actually being there. So writing is actually an incredibly important artifact which is what we're in fact dealing with, an extended version of writing now in these new technology and new media spaces. So writing emerges in 4 separate places in the world. What's interesting is it doesn't emerge in one place. People think, the Phoenicians. There was Egyptian hieroglyphics, which became, through the Phoenicians into alphabetic script, which came into Greek, which came into Roman alphabet, and here we are today. In fact, writing emerged in 3 other places in the world, entirely independently and entirely separately of that Western development. So it emerged in China. It emerged in India, in the Indus Valley, and it also emerged in Central America. So people in Central America invented forms of writing without any influence from anywhere else. So that's a very interesting phenomenon. But just to return to the Chinese phenomenon, in terms of these information technologies, the Chinese for centuries and millennia were ahead. So the Chinese invented paper. While Europe was creating, stuff from papyrus and producing parchments and stuff off animal skins, which was laborious and time-consuming and expensive. The Chinese invented paper in about 100 in terms of our Western calendar. But interestingly, typography was invented in China. The first typography in the world was invented by a person by the name of Bi Sheng in 1040, it's thought. So when Gutenberg comes along in the 1450s, in fact, the Chinese had this idea 400 years before. So for me, the whole Chinese counterpoint is very, very interesting. And of course, what emerges out of this world of writing and this world of official documents and the world of the Chinese state, which had official documents that it wrote and so on, is this, a central person becomes the idea of the scholar who teaches this stuff. So that's just my little explanation of an interesting historical tangent when we take a long view of these information and communication technologies.